Welcome back, Whisky fans. I'm sad to say that our Dram vent journey is nearly at an end. Christmas Eve, it's time for Dram number 24. Final Dram in our advent calendar. I've had to switch on to my Ardbeg Capita style glass today, because after yesterday's 18-year-old Talisker, that glass, no matter how many times I rinsed it with water, I just could not get rid of the peat. So there's no way that I'd be able to taste a whiskey fairly today with that glass. So that's always the sign of a good whiskey, isn't it? When you can't get rid of the peat smell from your glass afterwards. So that's completely empty now. Also, having to switch to Ardbeg because Talisker was too peaty. That's not a sentence that anyone has ever had to say in the past, is it? So, Dram number 24, the final Dram. They must have saved something good for the last day. They must have. That actually smells a little bit like the Talisker from yesterday, but without the peat. It's got that fruitiness, creaminess. It smells pretty old. Quite an orchard fruit note as well. So that quite a relaxed Dram, I'd say. Probably another Speyside, reasonably old. It's probably going to be a good one. So, managed to do this whole thing without accidentally seeing any. Good result. So the old Ardbeg glass, a little bit smaller than my usual Glencairns and stemmed glassware. So perhaps might give us a little bit more focused aroma. They're saying that the sides look a little bit straight as well, but it's not going to make a huge difference. It will certainly make a difference, but not a huge difference. So that's a really, really pleasant nose. Getting lots of caramel, very sweet, very sort of indulgent nose. Sweet caramel, apples, sugary, but a rounded sweet sugariness. Almost like distilled apple and caramel. Lovely maltiness in there. Now that's really interesting. Just as I was nosing that, I sort of moved away to exhale so I didn't blow all of the aroma away, moved back in, and as soon as I went in for, I think it was that third sniff, it's getting a much harder, slightly challenging note. There's a little bit of what I think is a slight sulphuriness to this one. A little bit of, I don't mean like an eggy sulphur, I don't mean like the type of sulphur that completely ruins a whiskey, the sort of thing that you get from sulphur candles in sherry casks. It's not like that. It's just a slight struck match note. I think this is probably an 18 to 20-year-old Speyside whiskey. No peat, but it has got that slight struck match sulphury note. It almost does the job of a little bit of peat, because you're kind of getting that smokiness, that slight hard challengingness that offsets the sweetness really well. Kind of does the same job as if they'd sort of lightly peated the malt on this one. Yeah, definitely like a struck match quality. And it actually goes really well with sweetness. So the thing about whiskey, I think when you start off in whiskey, it's all about looking for flavours, and then you eventually fall down the rabbit hole of looking for more and more extreme flavours. But I think after that, you kind of start to see the benefit of complexity in whiskey, complexity and balance. And I would say that this one has that. It's definitely an intense note of well-matured Scotch on this one, well-matured maltiness. I'm really looking forward to trying the palate on this one, because the nose is so... It's just interesting to see if the palate is going to be the same as the nose on this one, and I don't think it is, or if it's going to be something entirely different. Let's take a sip. Really nice palate. But the reason why I pulled a little bit of a face at the end there is because I think this one might not be a craft presentation. I think this is going to be probably 43 or 44%. Can't get over that slight struck match note on the nose now. But it's really very well controlled. It's all about balance. On the nose you've got that beautiful balanced juxtaposition between the sweet, appley caramel notes, some really juicy sherry casks gone into this one, and it's sherry that sadly we don't see that much these days. It's a type of sherry maturation that adds sweetness and body and character, and it rounds everything off, but it doesn't overpower. I'm not getting any obvious, like, the sort of notes that you would associate with actual sherry. It's not like drinking sherry, it's like drinking a whiskey that's been in a quality sherry cask, and those two things are very different. But when you get to the palate, it's actually a really nice sweetness, a full-bodied round sweetness on this one that follows up from the sweetness that you get on the nose. Lots of caramel, apples. There's also more of a savoury note to the palate of this whiskey. So a slight meatiness, and also a little bit salty. Slight leatheriness, so kind of that classic sherried old malt profile that you get, but not so much of the leatheriness. But the reason that I pulled a face is because the finish dies off very quickly. I'm going to guess probably 44% on the ABV of this one, and I'm basing that on the fact that the nose is really good, the early palate is very good, and then the late palate disappears much sooner than it should do. Definitely a very well made, beautiful, very enjoyable old single malt there. I'm actually going to revise my guess on the age, probably going to say 21 years old on this one. I do think that it's almost certainly a Speyside malt or a Speyside style Highland malt whiskey. The only thing that really comes to mind at the moment is maybe Fettercairn. And Fettercairn's not a distillery that I've had any of their older single malts for quite a while. But the distillery profile, it seems like one of those more challenging, slightly harder, slightly more developed, grown up, challenging Speysides. Let's take a look what we've got. Last one. Almost sad to see it go. It is sad to see it go. Mortlach. So Mortlach it's a Diageo distillery, and it's a distillery that we didn't really have much access to until fairly recently. ABV 43.4, so my guess of 44%, I think I said in the end. It's pretty close, and it's also a 20-year-old single malt Scotch whisky. So I imagine this is probably a little bit pricey. Let's have a quick look. How much are we looking at for a bottle? Yeah, £200. I would say if they went for a craft presentation, this one would potentially... No, £200 is still overpriced. I would say if they went for a craft presentation, then I think they could probably justify maybe £140 for a bottle of this one. Does it say anything here? Speyside single malt, unveiled in mid-2018, so it's not been around for very long. The Mortlach that I'm more familiar with is the Flora and Fauna. I think it was 16-year-old, to be honest. But some of those tasting notes that I was getting, the struck match note, slight meatiness, slight savoury, leathery, salty, I think that all fits in with the profile of Mortlach. Yeah, doesn't really say too much on here. Nice looking bottle, but then for £200 probably should be. The reviews on this website here as well. Very good reviews. People seem to like this one. 4.5 stars, 5, 5, 5, 3.5 stars someone's given it. It's kind of like someone's taken an old Glenlivet and just thrown a few curveballs in there, made it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more challenging. I don't know if you guys out there know exactly what I mean when I say challenging, but it's kind of the opposite to an easy drinking whiskey, and that sounds odd because you'd think that can't be a good thing. But whiskies can be too easy drinking, especially when you've tried a lot of whiskies and you're looking for something new, something with a little bit of pepper and spice in there, something to make it a little bit different, even if it's not necessarily the prettiest single malt in the world. Something that's different, which is basically what I mean when I say that it's challenging, something that's got some slightly odd, even slightly awkward notes in there. It just means that it has that little bit of character, and that in the right quantities is a very good thing in my opinion. And this one, along with a lot of Mortlach whiskey, definitely has that. Yeah, definitely a fantastic whiskey. It's going to be up there on a leaderboard. Shame that it's not a craft presentation. Probably in any way, I imagine it's probably chill filtered. Being owned by Diageo, it's probably unnaturally coloured as well. And obviously the ABV is nowhere near 46%. But it has got enough strength behind it that it's enjoyable. Apart from the fact that, as I said, in my opinion, the slightly lower strength does ruin the finish. So that is our last dram. Christmas Day tomorrow. I hope that you've all got some wonderful bottles of whiskey coming your way in your festive Christmas stocking. I'll probably do another video, maybe coming out tomorrow or later today, that just does a little rundown of what we've had here. Maybe highlight some of my favourite drams. Maybe hand out some wooden spoons to some of the not so fantastic drams. But anyone that's been out there at home tasting along with me, or just anyone that's been along with me for the entire ride on this one, thank you all for watching, and I hope you've had a great time. I certainly have. I'll see you all soon. Merry Christmas and cheers.